You are now listening to the Bluprint Pod. Get ready for another exciting episode, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Bluprint Pod. I am your host, Ray Roots, and today I don't have anyone joining me on the podcast. This is the first time in a couple of weeks we don't have any guests, and this is the first time I don't have my visuals with me, aka Muhammad Imam, because he's got the Rona. So he's home recovering. Prayers up for my boy. Hopefully he'll come back stronger next week. So today will just be me. And I think today's events are the perfect opportunity to cover the topic of adaptability, especially since COVID has kind of changed everyone's lives and sometimes our availability as well, depending on whether you're sick or not, or your work schedule and stuff like that. So first, I kind of want to talk about what we usually do here at the Bluprint and in terms of podcasts. So what we usually do is we record podcasts in advance, unless it's a super relevant, time-sensitive topic. And I don't think we've had any of those yet. So what we've done so far is we create them in advance. And I'll get into why we do that later on in this episode. So about a month ago, I tested positive for COVID, and that was around the time we had launched. I think we had launched for like 3-4 days, and then I got tested positive for COVID, and I was basically unable to create any form of any sort of content. So because we put in work before the day of the launch, we had enough material to get through the days where I was sick. And that meant that I could recover in peace without really having to worry about the brand. And as you could tell from the YouTube channel, Muhammad Imam completely took over in December while I was recovering. So that gave me like the peace of mind to know that, all right, we've done the work for the podcast. I can relax and he's going to take over in terms of videos while I'm recovering. So that basically means that our stockpiles of that means our stockpile of episodes were emptied in December. So after I recovered, we didn't have like any more episodes that were just in the vault. So what we do is we try to slowly build that back up, and I think that's something everyone should do, unless your area of expertise is something that is very, very time sensitive, like Bitcoin or something like that. Anyways. It's important for anyone who works on a schedule to fill up their stock in case something happens. And at my old job, they employed this method in terms of capital, which meant they didn't have to let go of a lot of people when COVID hit because they had that buffer built into their system, that financial buffer. So COVID hit, a lot of companies, they had to turn the key or let go of a lot of people because they simply weren't able to pay their salary. Now, the industry that I was working in, the nature of the industry was that it's not going to get as much hit by COVID as a restaurant or something like that. But it did get hit nevertheless. But because they built in that buffer, like I said before, me and other people were able to keep their jobs. So today we're supposed to record an episode with just me and Muhammad Imam where we kind of look back at the past couple of weeks. For the first time actually without a guest in a while. So it would just be Muhammad Imam and myself. And what we wanted to do was to basically do some short-term reflections because we've only been here doing this for like a month and a half. But we wanted to do some short-term reflections and talk about different things like New Year's resolutions and why we think people usually fail their New Year's resolutions. And we wanted to talk about COVID adjustments. And it's funny, we wanted to talk about COVID adjustments, and now we're adjusting because of COVID. However, because of the circumstances, we were prevented from recording that episode. So we had two options, and I want you guys to hang along here. It's not going to be about the Bluprint and our process for much longer. It's going to be about something that you can transfer to your own lives and your own businesses. So what we basically had was two options, and it was option A was to postpone until we were good to go again, or option B, which was to find a way to provide value for our viewers and listeners, even if we weren't a full team today. I think when you first start out, it's very important to set expectations with your viewer base, however small or large they may be. We said that we would drop something on the podcast every single Monday. And I know from personal experience, when I wake up on Monday mornings and I go to Apple Podcast and I search for my favorite podcast, which is a basketball related podcast, and I'm waiting for it to drop on schedule and it doesn't, I get frustrated. So I know it's important for the viewers to know when our episodes drop. And it's important that they can rely on us to actually drop those episodes on the day that we say we're going to do it. You also have to set expectations for yourself. So do we as a team want to be comfortable with missing a deadline? Or would we rather find some way to provide value on schedule, even if things doesn't go according to our plans? So how you respond to that, I think, early in the life cycle of your brand will have a huge impact going forward, because it basically sets the tone. It sets the tone between the team. It sets the tone between you and your viewers and listeners. It's a tone setter. And how you respond to the unexpected in the beginning will set the tone going forward. Now, obviously, if you have a bad start, you can always start over, or you can always adapt and get a good middle life cycle, and a good ending of the latter stages of your life cycle can also be good. But it's just so much harder because you're losing momentum. You're losing. Let's just say that you're creating a podcast like we are. You're losing momentum. You're losing listeners because they start to realize that you're not dependable. You start. You get put in this box of, just another podcaster who quit early. So it's important for us to set the tone early on that we want to create some sort of value for our listeners every single Monday. So if we go back like a few episodes, I think it was like our first or second episode on the podcast, we talked about me lacking motivation to launch the brand. And I said that because the timeline we had set was so long. Like we said, all right, we're going to have to do these tasks and then we'll launch. But every time we didn't actually finish those tasks, there wasn't a single consequence. And we kept postponing like calls and meetings. And what happened to the both of us is that we kind of lost trust in the meetings that we set up. So if I had said, let's set up a meeting next week, or if Muhammad Imam told me, let's set up a meeting in 2 days, I would know in 2 days. I'm not going to prioritize it because there's a 70% chance it's going to get canceled. I think this is somewhat of the same. Obviously, the circumstances are different, but I think the principle is the same. If we accept not posting on time, we essentially accept that we are okay with creating an environment where if things doesn't go according to plan, we bolt. And obviously, that's not something we want to do at the Bluprint. So if both of us were sick at the same time, then sure, all right, cool. But in December, Muhammad Imam was healthy, so he took over, and now it's the other way around. So now I got to take over. So you're probably going to see my face a lot more and probably hear me a lot more until he's fully recovered. And he's got to take his time to actually recover fully. We don't want to rush anyone back because we know the severity of COVID. And I'm not saying this to say, look at how disciplined we are, or look at how cool we are. Look at us, we're special. We're different. No, I'm saying this to draw a lesson that you and I can transfer to other areas of life, like I said before. So before this episode started, I messaged a friend because I was scrambling to find something worth talking about for today's episode. And I didn't want to just talk about randomness. I think the point here is to create value in terms of business, in terms of productivity, in terms of life, in terms of creativity, in some sense. Every Monday. I don't want to just sit in front of the microphone and ramble about nothing, or ramble about something I personally find funny, or something that's not related to the purpose of our podcast. We want to cultivate productivity. We want to cultivate happiness. We want to cultivate good habits. And so I was scrambling to find something to talk about today because Today's topic was canceled. Or the appointment of sitting down and recording a podcast together on the topic was canceled due to COVID. So I had to message a friend, and what he said was that our circumstances is the exact topic that I want to address, because unexpected realities are inevitable. Unexpected realities are inevitable. So the unexpected will happen. Like that's just a fact. It's going to happen. The question is just if it's on a micro or macro level from a societal standpoint. Is it going to affect just you, or is it going to affect everyone around the world? Like, you lose your job, it affects you. It affects the business that you worked at before. It may affect your family. It's not going to affect the entire world. Now, a global crisis, economic crisis, or a pandemic, that's going to affect the whole world. But in principle, how you respond to them is not much different, even if they're two different situations. So in 2020, the world was hit with what some call a black swan event. And a black swan event is it's a metaphor that describes an event that comes as a surprise and has a major effect. I'm going to say that again. It's a metaphor that describes an event that comes as a surprise and has a major effect. So it's a theory that was developed by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Probably butchering that name. Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And he developed it to explain, I'm going to read out loud. He developed it to explain three things. The disproportionate role of high profile, hard to predict, and rare events that are beyond the realm of normal expectations in history, science, finance, and technology. That's one. Number two, the non-computability of the probability of the consequential rare events using scientific methods. And number three, the psychological biases that blind people, both individually and collectively, to uncertainty and to a rare event's massive role in historical affairs. That first one, the disproportionate role of high-profile, hard-to-predict, and rare events that are beyond the realm of our normal expectations in history, science, finance, and technology. I don't even think an economic crisis fits into this, because there was a banker who came into my high school like 10 years ago, and he said every 10 to 15 years we expect a financial crisis. So you expect that, but a pandemic is different. So in 2020, we're hit with this black swan event, and we had to adapt. Most workplaces, they became remote workplaces, and kids were homeschooled, and conferences went digital, and so on and so forth. And the ones who weren't prepared had to shut down their business, or they started bleeding a lot. And some shut down immediately. Some started bleeding so much they eventually lost their lives. I'm talking about business, obviously. And of course, some businesses like restaurants and cafes, they're going to have a harder time adapting than like a software development company. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm simplifying things. And this isn't by any means a commentary on current events. What I want to do is I want to extrapolate principles from our collective and personal experiences to consolidate our future in case something some hardship inevitably happens again. Like, it's going to reoccur. What is something troubling? It's just something we didn't prepare for, something we didn't expect. I have an interesting story. 11 years ago, I was in high school. I was in a business high school. And in 2010, there was a volcano that erupted in Iceland. And it basically put all air traffic, and I think in Northern Europe, on hold. Because the smoke was dangerous for airplanes to fly in. Because it was so hot, it was going to melt the engines. It was a hazard to fly. So I was in high school at that time, and the topic we had like marketing and business administration, and the topic of supplier contracts came up. And I remember my teacher saying something that blew my mind back then. But he was saying that companies could enforce their contracts if deliveries were late, even if it was because the supplier was stuck due to the volcano. So think about that. You're a supplier in Iceland, or you're a supplier somewhere in Northern Europe, and you're delivering something to Australia, but you're stuck. You can't fly out of Europe. But it doesn't matter. You can enforce your contract. Now I don't know if those rules have changed now, but I also don't know if it's a good practice to burn the bridges to your supplier like that, because it is an unexpected volcano eruption. But imagine if it's a hospital needing crucial medicine to save lives. In that case, I suppose you could argue that the right thing to do would be to enforce the contract. And then he went on to talk about how you could enforce it. You get your supplier to pay for the goods from another supplier, but that's not important to this topic. But more importantly, say you're a supplier who's paying fines for late delivery because of something you didn't expect. I mean, is that fair? No. But also kind of is. Because the next time you sign a contract, I bet you bake unforeseen circumstances into the terms. And if you don't, you haven't learned. And the next time something like that happens again, you're going to be suffering. In my old workplace, their contracts, they baked pandemics into it. So in case a pandemic happened again, their contract would cover it. So a black swan theory is something that has a major effect on the world. A major effect on the world, like COVID-19. And it's something that shifts the things the way that we know it. And then comes the term, expect the unexpected. And it's a funny statement. It's like an oxymoron, but it's something we can do. Like, I'm not saying we can expect the unexpected, but you can expect that things won't go according to plan at some point. You can prepare for when the unexpected happens. It's just a matter of finding out what you want to prepare, and that's the hard thing. So if you're a content creator, you make content for social media on a posting schedule, how you want to prepare is maybe create content not on the day you post it, but create content for multiple days at a time. So when that day comes where you're inevitably sick, it's going to happen. If you're not sick, you might go through some financial trouble. You might get distracted. You might have a family member pass away. Something is going to happen to everyone at some point in life that's going to rock our lives and kind of shake our foundation. Now, if you were just waiting for the day you're posting to actually post, well, you're in trouble then. But if you prepare, you're better set. So the unexpected thing that will happen to everyone is inevitable. It can mean money, time, and other things depending on what business you're operating in. So if you run a business with employees, do you maximize profits for management and just generally just break even? Do you prepare for the days where your business won't be booming? Now I realize there's some tax reasons why companies try not to keep a major profit, why they want to minimize their profit and expand their costs. But is that preparing? Those are just some things to consider, because the world is to some extent the survival of the fittest. And it applies on so many levels of society and business. Adaptability is basically the key to survival in business and in life. So let me give you like an extreme example. If you don't adapt, you'd be stuck in a perpetual state of sorrow the moment you get hit with bad news. Now that's an extreme example, but you get the point. Or we shut down every project that we create the moment it doesn't go according to plan. Now, how many people can relate to that? You start a t-shirt selling business, an online t-shirt selling business. Something goes wrong. All right, on to the next project. Then you want to become a photographer, but you can't really seem to master your camera. All right, you move on to the next thing. Or you're a photographer booked for a wedding. You bring one camera, and that camera breaks, and you can't get the job done. That's because you didn't prepare. That's because, we move on from project to project, not because it's not working out for me, but because we're incapable and unwilling to adapt. I've said this before on another episode. The winner is typically just the person who's just been there longer than everyone else. I'm starting to read about crypto and stuff, but let's give crypto's like so modern. Let's give a modern example. Who's the winner of Bitcoin? Like the biggest winner of Bitcoin? Is it you who bought it at 40,000? Or is it someone who bought it for $2 and kept it? Both of you are winning, but the winner is the one who stays true to their course the longest, the last man standing. I don't know if that was a good example. So anyways, survival of the fittest. Adaptability is survival of the fittest. It's the way that you survive. So what's the point of this episode? It's not to tell cool stories about my high school teacher, or about a volcano eruption, or about businesses, my old workplace. No. It's to find some way to cultivate adaptability and to prepare in advance. So the day that you inevitably get hit with hardship, you've accumulated the tools that enable you to adapt and evolve. I'm going to say that again. It's to prepare in advance. So when hard times are coming, when you struggle, when your business isn't going the way you want to, when you don't want to create content, when you don't feel like it, or something has happened, something legit. Not just a feeling of, I don't feel like it, but something legit. You're sick. You don't feel well. Whatever comes in the way of your plans, if you don't adapt, you create bad habits. You set the tone. And eventually, you'll probably fail if you don't adapt. But if you don't prepare, when you're in a state of success, if you don't prepare for the days where you probably will have it harder than you have it now, then you won't have the tools that will enable you to adapt. It's easier to adapt when you have the right tools. It's harder when you've ignored the possibility of hardship and then it comes out of nowhere. I'm not saying all of this so that we become extreme working machines who work so hard that when we hit our mid-40s, we're drained. That's not the point. The point is how we work smart. So we continue to work with whatever it is that we love. Adapt, prepare. So for us at the Bluprint, we've experienced the unexpected. I don't know if you could call it the unexpected because we were in the middle of a pandemic, so getting COVID isn't unexpected. But we've experienced something that threw us off course right from a few days after we launched. But because we prepared before launch, we were able to survive December on just one member doing a lot of the work. And today we face another challenge. Our vault is empty. But the promises we made are already made. We drop an episode every Monday. We provide life value and business value and creative value every Monday. So regardless of the circumstances, as long as one of us are healthy and able, we will continue to drop an episode every Monday on the best podcast in the world, which is the Bluprint Pod. So I'm going to keep this episode short and sweet. And I apologize for not making it longer, but at least I feel like I've provided you guys and girls with some content that you can actually use, some content that you can reflect on and think about. Am I good at preparing? Am I good at adapting? Am I willing to prepare? Am I willing to adapt? Being willing to prepare means that you open your eyes while you're being showered with money and you say, hold up a minute, one day all this money won't be coming. Are you willing to prepare? And when that hardship comes, are you willing to adapt? Or do you want to quit and move on to the next project or business or idea? The more we give in to this idea and this voice of quitting instead of adapting, the more power it's going to have over us. So you need to actively fight it. So like I said, I'm going to keep this episode short and sweet. I want to spend the last few minutes to thank everyone for tuning in every week. We are slowly growing as a platform, but we are growing. And we appreciate everyone who joined us early on, and we appreciate everyone who's joining us now. We appreciate everyone who's going to join us later down the line. But if you enjoy the work that we do and the content that we create, and you feel like it creates some sort of value or it can create value for someone you know, please share it with a friend or your family or even both, because it does help us a lot. And it'll help us to grow even faster and bigger. So make sure you follow us on social media. On Twitter, it's Bluprint_tweets. And on Instagram, it's the Bluprint IG. And Bluprint is spelled BLUPRINT. Follow me on Instagram at Raymond.roots. Follow Muhammad Imam at MI_visuals on Instagram. And until next time, stay creative, stay productive, stay safe. Peace. Thank you for listening to the Bluprint Pod. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tell a friend and stay tuned for the next one. Peace.